Very good evening, friends. We are going to start the session on non-invasive ventilation. I'm audible? I'm audible? Okay. Okay, we have continuously, we are talking about this respiratory management regarding this COVID-19 respiratory failure, which is on definitely on hypoxemic respiratory failure, which is very cumbersome. It lead on to happy hypoxia, and patient is not aware about this hypoxia and it lead on to death of the patient. But the very horrible thing is patient is conscious till death. That is the very horrible situation. Now the pandemic is going on, and we have talked about in the previous sessions regarding this respiratory management modes of ventilation. Regarding this management, now we talk about on non-invasive ventilation. Mechanics of breathing. The air is coming inside, and the inspiratory muscles and respiratory muscles. Inspiratory muscle, the major inspiratory muscle in our body is a diaphragm, which contributes 85% of the tidal volume. And during contraction, the diaphragm is going up, producing some pressure changes inside the lung that will produce causing entry of air inside it. So breathing in, the chest expands, and breathing out, the chest contracts, and whatever the volume in the lung is expelled out. Here, there is some pressure changes lead on to volume changes in the lungs. This act of breathing in and breathing out. So these pressure changes that will be applied to the mechanical ventilation. Here, see the graph. What are the pressure changes and what happens to the volume changes inside the lungs during our normal respiration. Our normal respiration is a negative pressure respiration. See this 0 point. There is the pressure, atmospheric pressure, that is 0.0 centimeter of water. We take it as granted. And then when you open our mouth and glottis are opened, and there cannot be any airflow from the atmosphere to our lungs, because the pressure inside the lung and pressure outside the lung, that is in the atmosphere, both are same, and there is no inflow or outflow of air. So when the inflow of air will occur, see that there is the pressure starting point of inspiration, and that gradually comes down to the maximum negative pressure of minus 7.5 centimeter of water. So the pleural pressure, the diaphragm contracts, drags down the pleura, producing maximal negative pressure. That what happens, the alveolar pressure which is present inside the alveoli before the act of inspiration is 0, come down to somewhat negative here. See, this is now negative here. And the pleural pressure goes down to minus 7.5 centimeter of water, more negative. And the quality of the negative pressure is drawing air, sucking property, and it sucks the air from the atmosphere. So the air will be get inside the lungs, 0.5 ml during the act of inspiration because of the negative pressure. So there is an alveolar pressure become less negative, and this pleural pressure become more negative. There is a gradient between this alveolar pressure and pleural pressure, which is reflected back at the atmosphere. Inside the lung, it is negative. Pleura is more negative, minus 7.5 centimeter of water, and alveoli is less negative, subatmospheric, minus 1 centimeter of water, and the atmosphere is 760 millimeter of mercury, that is positive side, 1 atmosphere. So there is an pressure gradient between the alveoli and the atmosphere. There is a gradient between the pressure that creates flow of air from the atmosphere to our lungs. That is the normal respiration, where there is a generation of pressure gradient. The generation of pressure gradient needs some energy, some work of the muscles. and that is called work of breathing. I will talk about later. So there is a pressure difference makes the volume change due to gas flow. So this amount of energy required to ventilate the lung, that is called work of breathing. That is to overcome the resistance offered by the quality of the lung, the elastic recoil of the lung. So the tendency of the lung, there are two pressures acting. See this picture, there are two pressures acting inside the lung, in the thoracic cavity. One is the alveolar pressure, that is due to elastic recoil, always pull the lung down. And another pressure acting on the chest wall and the pleura, that always acting outside the lung, pulling the lung out. So there is a negative pressure, this is a positive pressure. The both pressures are acting alternatively, producing in and out of air flow that lead on to our normal respiration, inspiration and expiration. So here, that is our normal respiration. Here, in the machines are doing our respiration, taking over our respiration. And usually, this type of negative pressure will not take part. And it starts with the positive pressure, goes with the positive pressure, maintain with the plateau pressure, and then expiration at the level of positive pressure. So there is the basic difference between our normal negative pressure ventilation and the machine's positive pressure ventilation that is going on. And by definition, non-invasive ventilation, non-invasive, that means no need of any artificial airway. So it is a technique of providing ventilation without use of invasive artificial airway. It doesn't need any laryngoscope, endotracheal tube, anything else, any additional apparatus. We cannot invade the tracheobronchial tree. That is the important thing. There are two types I have already told in this non-invasive ventilation. Our normal respiration is negative pressure. In those days, in 1900s and 1960s, and they are using this negative pressure ventilation by using these two machines that is called iron lung, like that of our normal respiration. Can you take this out? And by this iron lung and by chest crash, I will show you the pictures. And nowadays, these two are obsolete now. They are gone out. And this non-invasive positive pressure ventilation is going on now by three modes. One is the continuous positive airway pressure, how it works, I will explain you. And bilevel positive airway pressure and pressure support ventilation. These are the three modes of non-invasive ventilation available now. And coming to this negative pressure ventilation, and this machine will create a negative pressure outside the chest wall. And this negative pressure transmitted on the chest wall, pulling the chest wall rise and abdominal wall rise, and that will produce a gradient between the atmosphere and inside the lung, producing the flow of air due to pressure changes. It is the olden days. And the negative pressure doesn't require any artificial airway. See that the head is gone out, it is outside our negative pressure chamber. And in this chamber, they are voluntarily creating negative pressure that will expand the chest wall, producing transthoracic pressure gradient and sucking out the atmospheric air. And this is a negative pressure chamber that is called iron tank. And another type is called crash or chest cell. And this chamber, they are voluntarily producing what I have told earlier, producing the negative pressure. And here the almost whole body except our head and neck is spared in this type of iron tank is concerned. And regarding this crash or chest cell, only the chest is covered and put a negative pressure is transmitted over the chest wall to pulling up, producing the gradient and flow of air from the atmosphere, almost like that of our normal respiration. So for that, in our olden days, where the polio is in outbreak, in those days, they are using this iron tank that they will produce negative pressure inside it. Almost all the respiratory muscles are paralyzed in our polio period. And those days, our pioneers are well versed and understanding our normal respiratory pattern, that is due to our negative pressure gradient between our atmosphere and our alveoli. The same thing they are applying with the iron tank and crash. And later days they are producing, they have to produce the negative pressure all over the body, which is needed is chest wall, and they will produce a crash or chest cell that will create a negative pressure over the chest wall. So this iron tank, I have already told, the head and neck is paired, and there is a tank is there, and there are meters are there to produce the monitor the negative pressure created by the tank. So it doesn't require any artificial airway. So it can be used extensively and successfully to support this chronic ventilatory failure in those days. Now it is totally obsolete. And what are the contraindications? When you should not use this tank if there is a respiratory arrest. For the tank negative pressure ventilation, you have to apply for it. The patient should have at least spontaneous breathing. Otherwise, there is no use at all. And patient hemodynamic instability, and there is high risk of aspiration patient, uncooperative patient, or agitated patient. And if there is any life-threatening refractory hypoxemia, impaired mental status, the patient is unconscious, you cannot use it. And facial and upper GIT surgeries and any craniofacial abnormalities, these are all the situations it is not possible to use this iron tank. And there are some complications will occur with this tank, and that is the most important thing is the tank shock, because abdominal blood pooling, because of the negative pressure quality, we are sucking the blood from the periphery and pulling it in the abdomen, and that reduces the venous return, thereby reducing the preload and lead on to compromising our cardiac output and lead on to shock states. I mean low cardiac output states. That is called as tank shock. There is a major problem in using these iron tanks. And chest crash, it is a modified technique. The patient chest leaves the arms and lower body exposed, and chest wall still improves the patient access and decrease the potential for tank shock, because abdomen is totally spared and there is no pooling of blood in the abdomen. Okay. And what are the limitations with this shell? It is not possible to make a tight seal between the patient and the chest wall. And there can be air leaks, and we cannot able to maintain the negative pressure very correctly and adequately. But most of the time it will be very useful in the home settings. But there is any possibility of leaks because of the positioning of our body. There is most possibility of air leaks, and we cannot able to maintain the negative pressure to have the desired effects. And come to the topic proper. And I have already told these type of negative pressure ventilations are gone out, and we are mainly on positive pressure ventilation non-invasively by 3 modes. One is the CPAP mode. CPAP mask, you are all aware about it. I will show you the mask. There were the gadgets used in this ventilation. And another one is the BiPAP, bi-level positive airway pressure. CPAP means continuous positive airway pressure. BiPAP means bi-level positive airway pressure. And this PSV, that means pressure support ventilation. What are the devices used for this? You can have the glands. It is a nasal mask. You can apply only to the nose only. It's a very most common interface. Maintaining a soft cushion and its comfort is made inside the nasal mask. And the problem is there is a leak is the major problem, but it is very comfortable. These are all the parts of the mask. This is an elbow tube. The frame is there, and small cushion is there, and this cushion for so many sizes, small, medium, and large, and this headgear for straps for tight fitting over the head, because to prevent any leaks. What are the advantages? It is very comfortable, definitely. You are making on the nose only. It's a nose only, and the patient compliance is very good. And disadvantage is the leak. That is the problem. And then sometimes nose will become dry, and it will become irritable, and it will cause sometimes very distress to the patient. And next is the oronasal mask, very commonly used. It has a soft cushion that makes a contact with the patient and the nasal and oral area. Here this nasal and oral area. And the tight seal is easier with the head straps to maintain the both nose and mouth are covered. And the problem is there is both are covered, producing positive pressure inside the oral cavity and the nose. There is every chance for regurgitation and aspiration, and that is not preventable. There is a major problem in using this oronasal mask, positive pressure mask. And next one is the nasal pillow. It's an advanced stage. There is a small interface commonly used for CPAP therapy, and does not come into contact with the lips or chin or cheeks. It is only inside this pillow is inside the nasal cavity, and the patient is so much comfortable. You can see the picture. It is a very good alternative to nasal, oronasal, and full face mask. See that nasal pillow and strap. This is the picture showing, and very useful in BiPAP. But compliance with this nasal pillow is it will produce nasal congestion most of the time, because nose is tightly closed, and because of the pressure effect, the nose can bleed at all, and sometimes it will produce dry nose, and it will produce sore mouth also because of the pressure effect. And to prevent this drying effect, we can add a humidifier or a saline nasal spray may help to minimize these side effects. It is a full face mask. It is an advanced version. Here we are covering the almost whole of the face, and the mask is able to cover the nasal bridge, mouth, and the almost all most of the cheek and most of the forehead also. And there cannot be any air leaks here, and the pressure source are inevitable because we are tightly fitting to prevent these air leaks around the nose and the mouth. It is ideal for claustrophobic patients because it is a very transparent mask. We can see through the mask, which is very transparent, with see through the atmosphere, environment, and ideal for claustrophobic patients and mouth breathers. And the patient without teeth or with facial abnormalities, it can fit inside very easily, making it very comfort to the patient. That is called a full face mask. And what are the indications for this using this non-invasive ventilation? And in obese patients, it is commonly very well used, reducing the work of breathing. And patient with acute respiratory failure, it is the most important implication. And the patient with COPD, Those patients are more commonly going for hypercapnic and sometimes hypoxemic respiratory failure. That is called acute hypercapnic exacerbations of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is concerned. And these are all the common indications where you can apply non-invasive ventilation. And now we are in the problem of COVID-19 patient. Those patients are mostly of hypoxemic respiratory failure, not hypercapnic, because there is no apnea. The contraindications where you cannot use this non-invasive ventilation is patient with no respiration. Patient with respiratory arrest, you cannot use it. There is no point in using these machines. And unable to handle, the secretions are very more that lead on to aspiration and regurgitation. And facial trauma patients, we cannot fix it properly. It is not possible. And patient with claustrophobia regarding this mask, you should not use it because they are not cooperative and they will not keep the mask inside the face and lead on to so many problems. You cannot able to maintain the mask. And coming to this modes of ventilation, I have already told earlier. And the first mode is continuous positive airway pressure mode, which is present inside the machine. You can click the button of CPAP. CPAP. That's all. That's our duty is over. And the continuous positive airway pressure, that is what we have to explain this. We are starting with, I have already told earlier, we are starting the respiration with a 0 point of 0 centimeter of water at the pressure. And then we can go to the negative pressure, creating a flow, and positive pressure, expelling the flow. And negative pressure, creating the flow, and positive pressure, expelling the flow. Okay. Here, starting with this 0 point, producing negative pressure is a normal respiration, which is not here. We are starting with the 10 centimeter of water, that is the basal point. We are starting with a tracheobronchial tree pressure of 10 centimeter of water. Start with this, and the flow coming like this, and at the end of expiration, here we are producing expiration at positive pressure. So starting point of inspiration and starting point of expiration both are in positive pressure level. We are creating positive pressure inside the tracheobronchial tree. That is the ideology behind it. So inspiratory peak airway pressure and expiratory peak airway pressure. It is a peak airway pressure inspiratory. It is a peak expiratory airway pressure. Both are in the positive level. So what happens? What is the advantage of creating positive pressure and both phases of respiration? What is the ideology behind it? So during negative pressure ventilation, we are sucking air from the atmosphere, and positive pressure, we are creating positive pressure, and whatever the air inside the alveoli will be expelled out, and the alveoli will collapse. For next act of inspiration, we have to re-expand the alveoli. It needs more energy. The work of breathing is more, especially in a patient with respiratory failure. So work of breathing is increased and the respiratory rate is increased because of the air hunger, oxygen hunger. More work of breathing, almost our respiratory muscle going for fatigueness, lead on to further deteriorating the condition. So with this, we are not generating this positive pressure, almost all phases of respiration. There is the work of breathing is totally reduced because the alveoli will not collapse at all. There is a recruitment of alveoli. There is re-expansion of alveoli is not much a problem, and more energy is not needed. So work of breathing is so much reduced. That is the ideology in applying continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP. Continuous positive airway pressure. That means at both phases of respiration occurs in the positive pressure environment. There cannot be any negative pressure inside the tracheobronchial tree. So continuous positive airway pressure throughout the cycle of respiration, both in inspiration and expiration, in a spontaneous breathing patient. So we can apply this mode in a patient with a spontaneous breathing patient. It will reduce the work of breathing and will increase the functional residual capacity. I have already told earlier that there are two pressures acting on the airway in the earlier slides. And the negative pressure and positive pressure, at one point these both pressure meet at one point. Can you go to the next slides earlier? Can you? I will show you the slide for your better understanding regarding this FRC is concerned. It is where it is the first slide. Oh, slides are here. This picture. There are two pressures acting in the thoracic cavity. One is the negative pressure, one is the positive pressure. At one point, these two pressures meet together, and this negative pressure and this positive pressure are balanced at this point. At that juncture, there is a volume of air present in the lung. There cannot be any movement at all at that point. That volume, that capacity is called functional residual capacity. That is the storage capacity of our lungs. That is the storage capacity of our lung for our periods of apnea, periods of cessation of breathing. And that is the storage capacity which will be utilized when we are having the respiratory arrest. We cannot go in for cardiac arrest because the air, the oxygen present inside the residual capacity, that is about roughly about 2.8 to 3 liters of gas is present inside the lung. So with this, what I am talking to you is the functional residual capacity is increased by applying this CPAP, because we are maintaining the positive pressure at both phases of expiration. So we are, what happens? We are applying positive pressure at the end of expiration. There is a PEEP effect will occur in CPAP during the phase of expiration. So the alveoli will not collapse at all, totally, and able to maintain the capacity, volume inside the lung, thereby increasing the FRC inside the lung. So the positive pressure ventilation, the points are increasing the FRC, increasing the FRC. See that slide, original slide where I have left. Oh, no. And prevent the collapse of the alveoli. Collapse, I mean recruitment of the alveoli. So recruitment means re-expansion of the alveoli. So once it is collapsed, to open the alveoli, it needs more energy, thereby reducing the work of breathing. So this CPAP mode in a spontaneously breathing patient helps in increasing the FRC and prevents collapsing of the alveoli, thereby reducing the work of breathing of the patient. Because in those respiratory failure patients or tachypneic, dyspneic, and accessory muscles are working, and much more work of breathing. They are anxious, there are more sympathetic discharge is there. All will be reduced by applying positive pressure, using this both phases of respiration. That is the ideology behind CPAP. What I have already told earlier, and in another cardiogenic pulmonary edema, you can use this patient with cardiogenic pulmonary edema by simply applying this oxygen mask, ordinary mask. When you apply CPAP mask, that will be very useful for the patient. That will be reducing the work of breathing, number one, and you can reduce the afterload of the patient, thereby improving the cardiac output. Will be more effective in management of the cardiogenic pulmonary edema also, the CPAP. So usually the CPAP is commonly used in our home settings, usually commonly indicated in obstructive sleep apnea, where there is an airway obstruction and the closing capacity, the alveoli will collapse usually during the tidal volume of the patient, because the closing capacity of the lung is higher than the functional residual capacity. I have no slides at all to delineate between this closing capacity and functional residual capacity, what it is. The airway closure occur at certain volume of the patient, certain capacity of the patient. So the closing capacity exceeds the, what I have told earlier, this functional residual capacity, airway collapse, airway closure will occur and reduces the volume FRC drastically, lead on to desaturation. To prevent this, we are applying positive pressure at the end of this expression, lead on to recruitment of the alveoli, I mean re-expansion of the alveoli, maintaining the alveolar pressure inside it and opening up all the alveoli, lead on to prevent weekend desaturation. And which conditions we cannot use it? Contraindication for the CPAP. Any apnea you cannot use, any respiratory errors you got to intubate and ventilate the patient. And if there is a progressive hypoventilation, I mean hypoventilation means the rate of respiration is very, very less. And if there is extreme fatigue of the respiratory muscles, the muscles need rest, means you have to intubate, paralyze and ventilate the patient. Patient with the facial trauma, you cannot use it because you cannot able to fit the mask over the face. And claustrophobic patients, you cannot use it, we have already told earlier, and they will not cooperate at all. And another mode of ventilation is bilevel positive airway pressure. That is, and here we are using this mode. In CPAP, we are using this mode in spontaneously breathing patient. In bilevel BiPAP, bilevel positive airway pressure, we are setting up different pressure points in inspiration and expiration. In CPAP, both inspiration and expiration takes place in the same point, because here the inspiration and expiration takes in various positive pressure points. So there is an air gradient is very good. We can deliver a mechanical breath to the patient. That is the basic difference between the CPAP and BiPAP. Here they see the picture here. The inspiration starts here. There is an normal respiration. There is an CPAP respiration at the pressure of positive pressure of 10 centimeter of water. Here it is a BiPAP curve. We are starting the inspiration at 12 centimeter of water and starting off expiration at 8 centimeter of water. So there is a, and see this peak inspiratory airway pressure is 22 centimeter here and peak expiratory airway pressure is 10 centimeter here. There is a gross difference between these 2 points, lead on to gradient, and there is, we can deliver a mechanical breath in using this bilevel positive airway pressure is concerned, even though the patient is hypoventilated, and in those situations you can use it. So the indication for this BiPAP is acute respiratory failure, and we can use this very well in acute hypercapnic exacerbation of COPD patients. So here there is an already, I have already told earlier, there is a combination of inspiratory partial airway pressure and expiratory partial airway pressure. And inspiratory partial airway pressure producing a pressure support, thereby augmenting the tidal volume. And if you are applying this positive pressure at expiration, that will produce PEEP effect, thereby recruitment of the alveoli, preventing alveolar collapse and increasing the FRC. And for this inspiratory posterior pressure, they will reduce the work of breathing of the patient and thereby reducing the oxygen demand for it, and it will increase the tidal volume of the patient, and the work of breathing is reduced. That will reduce the respiratory rate also, which I have told earlier these slides. So normal breathing and CPAP breathing and bilevel PAP breathing, BiPAP breathing. It is an inspiratory peak airway pressure, expiratory peak airway pressure. That is the bilevel PAP, BiPAP support, where there is an augmentation of positive pressure, there will be augmentation of the tidal volume, thereby reducing the work of breathing. Okay. And so the CPAP only takes over this hypoxemia only. The BiPAP, it is delivering the mechanical breath, not only the supporting the spontaneous respiration of the patient, it delivers mechanical breath. So it can take over the hypercapnia, increase in the CO2 elimination also. And next mode is the pressure support ventilation. And pressure support ventilation means for this it is purely a spontaneous mode. It is a purely a spontaneous mode, the patient having spontaneous breaths. But this PSV, the pressure support ventilation, augments the tidal volume of the patient, and the patient PSV provides patient triggered inspiration. That is, the inspiratory flow rate. See, the patient is having some amount of triggering is there, taking this spontaneous breathing. It's taken over by this pressure support, thereby increasing the positive pressure inside the tracheobronchial tree, thereby flow of more air flow because of reduction in the work of breathing, more air flow here, and this was maintained. And how much the flow is maintained? It's a decelerating pattern. The inspiratory flow rate in PSC has decelerating flow pattern, and the pressure augmented tidal volume is terminated when the inspiratory flow rate decreases to 25% of the initial flow. Usually initial flow, and at this point an inspiration is switched over to expiration, and the volume inside the lung is expelled out even in the positive pressure environment. That will producing the PEEP effect, that will prevent collapse of the alveoli, the mean recruitment of the alveoli. So it augments the patient's spontaneous respiratory effort, maintaining the positive pressure, thereby reducing the work of breathing, change over to expiration, and expiration starts and expiration finishes at the positive pressure environment. So usually this pressure support is usually combined with the CPAP. So the CPAP here, if you combine with the CPAP, what happens? And both phases during inspiration and expiration are present in the positive pressure environment, plus augmentation of the tidal volume, thereby drastic reduction in the work of breathing and increasing the tidal volume delivered to the patient, and that is more useful. In modern days, we are using CPAP and PSC both together. There is a very preferred mode of non-invasive ventilation. So the patient, who are the patient to be selected for this non-invasive ventilation? Patient with acute or acute on chronic hypercapnia, that is the COPD patient on exacerbation, acute exacerbation. COPD patient on acute exacerbation going for hypercarbia and hypoxemia. They mean this oxygenation failure and ventilatory failure. This ventilatory failure is called respiratory acidosis. The respiratory acidosis means accumulation of CO2, hypercapnia. There is an impending hypercapnia and respiratory acidosis. You can select the patient, and patient with a marked dyspnea and tachypnea, and patient with increased work of breathing, and patient with oxygenation failure. These are all the patients to be selected for non-invasive ventilation. And these are all the indication. You can use these non-invasive for acute respiratory failure and chronic respiratory failure and immunocompromised patient. Those patients we cannot able to intubate. We can use this non-invasive ventilation to prolong the life of the patient. And these are the indications which I have already told earlier. There is a ventilatory failure I have already told. Ventilatory failure means accumulation of CO2 more than 45 millimeter of mercury by the ABG value, and the pH shows acidosis that is less than 7.35. So these are all the indications. These are the clinical situation. What I have told is the clinical findings in previous slide. Here the clinical situations in COPD, status of pneumothorax, post-extubation, any weaning difficulties in a mechanical ventilation, patients and thoracic wall abnormality, cystic fibrosis, and post-surgical respiratory failure, and acute respiratory failure and obesity. That is very common, sleep apnea syndrome, and it is exacerbation. And we can use this NIV mask with the machine with oxygenation failure also. I have already told earlier in the previous classes what is oxygenation failure. There is an oxygenation from the lungs to the periphery. That is diagnosed by using this ABG value that is less than 60 millimeter of mercury, or by simply by using this pulse oximetry. If it is less than 95%, the patient is having oxygenation failure. These are the common situations you can come across with this oxygenation failure. There is hypoxemic respiratory failure, cardiogenic pulmonary edema, and community acquired pneumonia, where there is an oxygenation failure is very, very common, and post-traumatic respiratory failure and acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, and weaning difficulties in a patient with a chronic ventilation, chronic mechanical ventilation. These are all the monitoring responses you have to take care of when the patient is on an IV. Physiologically, you have to oximetry, pulse oximetry monitoring is very essential. And you have to note the patient monitoring of exhaled tidal volume, how much of tidal volume that was exhaled by the patient. You have to continuously observe it. And you can do ABG and assess the blood gas values, CO2 level and PO2 level, and what is the pH level. That is most important. They will monitor the response of the therapy. Thereby we can judge the prognosis of the patient. And subjectively we can monitor it, whether the patient having dyspneic or tachypneic, and the comfort of the patient is very comfortable or not. Other objectives, you can note the respiratory rate if there is a high or low, and you can judge the chest wall movement, it is adequate or not, and coordination of the respiratory effort. That is during inspiration whether the chest expands, and during inspiration chest expands, or during expiration chest retracts. Coming out chest wall movements, up and down movements, you can monitor it, and you can monitor the vitals also, heart rate and BP, and the mental status of the patient. And mental status is most important, and very good coordinating in a conscious patient going for confused state. You always think in terms of hypoxemia. And these are the criteria for terminating where you should not use it. You shut down this NIV, switch over to non-invasive ventilation. When there is a worsening of pH and PCO2, the patient going for acidosis and CO2 accumulation is going high, that is called respiratory acidosis. And the patient is tachypneic after putting the patient on NIV, more tachypneic, and the respiratory rate is very high. And after putting the patient, the hemodynamic stability is not good, and patient going for hypotension. And when putting the patient on NIV, we cannot able to maintain the saturation below over 90%, and it should cut down and switch out to another mode of ventilation. And the patient going for level of consciousness coming down, and from the consciousness to stupor and comatosis. And the secretions in the patients are very much, and that is very cumbersome and lead on to aspiration. And the patients who are not able to tolerate NIV, and these are all the situations you cannot use NIV, and you can switch over to another mode of ventilation. So what are the complications that will occur with NIV? The complications are nasal and pharyngeal dryness and vasomotor rhinitis, and the most common complication is the air leaks. We cannot able to tightly fit the mask with the head strap, and lead on to air leaks, and ventilation is not effective, and we cannot able to maintain the pressure. And because of the tight fitting over the head by straps and all those things, it will produce skin irritation on the nasal bridge. And because of the high positive pressure inside the oral cavity that is transmitted to the esophagus, and that will lead on to gastric distension, and the intragastric pressure will become high, and that will incompete the lower gastroesophageal sphincter, lead on to silent aspiration. That is very common. It will be a very dreaded complication of NIV. We should be very careful in putting NIV in the patient. So the pressure limitation and how can the patient accept, we have to adjust the pressure limitations. And airflow induced arousals are very common, because there is a patient is conscious. We cannot able to sedate the patient because almost most of the patients are in spontaneous breathing. We have to maintain the spontaneous breathing in patient is on an IV, and this pressurized gas insufflated into the mouth, producing airflow arousal. The patient cannot sleep at all. It's not come most of the time. Most of the patients will not comfortable with this using this NIV mask also. So some of the journals are published regarding this COVID-19 respiratory failure. What is the role of NIV, whether it is very useful in conscious patients of COVID-19 with hypoxemic respiratory failure? Yes, this journal is taken from the Journal of Intensive Care and Critical Care, published in May 2020, and that concludes that this NIV has a significant advantages over traditional mechanical ventilation. However, it must be remembered that even in experienced hand, NIV is successful in 75 to 90% of the cases. And another journal taken from this, NIV in COVID-19 respiratory failure, the use of NIV. Again, this publication is on 20th May 2020. There is a traditional significant advantages over this mechanical ventilation. I mean this invasive ventilation. And NIV is successful in 75 to 90% of the cases. Only 10% of it is not successful due to many other factors, and severity of the respiratory failure, and training and experience of the medical personnel, and if it is extreme level of lung involvement, more than 90% of the patient lung involvement, this NIV will not work out at all. And this non-invasive ventilation in the treatment of hypoxemic respiratory failure caused by COVID-19 by Critical Care Journal, published in 11 June 2020. Here, there is a comparison between this HFNO and CPAP. HFNO means high flow nasal oxygen, and CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, and both are compared. And this journal shows that provide prospective randomized controlled trial are necessary to compare this HFNO and CPAP to provide more evidence on indications for different non-invasive respiratory effort. We cannot able to, this journal, this study shows that there is no much of a difference between using this HFNO and NIV. By using the CPAP, there is no marked difference. Both are almost equal. There is no better advantages are claimed in using this NIV with the CPAP ventilation. And non-invasive ventilation with high frequency nasal oxygen, I have already told earlier in this, NIV and HFNO remains contentious, and evidence for almost still are gathered here. This CPAP was only considered in Italy to address the lack of ventilators, but has been shown to play a positive role in some patients. It cannot and does not replace invasive ventilation. That is the definite role. Invasive ventilation is the definite treatment, but it may, if used rarely, non-invasive ventilation reduce the deterioration point of the patient. That is the most important point they have noted in Italy. And this is published in June 1, 2020. Thank you very much.